thanks everyone for joining us for this 5 Peaks virtual information session. So whether you're an experienced ultra runner or tackling your first ultra run, or any distance, we're happy to have everyone here tonight, and we can go through some questions with our panelists. So how it's going to work, I'll just introduce our incredible panelists that we've got here about their experiences, insights and advice from everything from training to nutrition, mental toughness, and we'll find out some of their running stories. And we'll also have time for questions at the end. So I'll firstly introduce everyone. We've got Ering. She's our accredited sports dietitian. She's a distance runner and a founder of Ultra Appetites. She supports runners across Australia and New Zealand, has 17 years experience in clinical care, private practice, teaching and research, and she blends her expertise with real world experience. She's currently completing her master's by research on nutrition and running related injuries and has a focus on helping athletes stay strong and healthy. She's a passionate endurance runner, has raced up to 100k worldwide. She's a mum, business owner, student, athlete, and understands the challenges of fueling well and providing a practical, personalised guidance to help others perform at their best. So thank you, Ering, for joining us.
Thank you.
And then we have Beck. Beck Butler, she loves doing her own wild adventures. Give her the maps, gear lists and spreadsheets, and she's happy to be signed up. But thinking about doing it, and she usually ends up outsourcing the whole thing by signing up for a big race. Some people call her an ultra runner, but she says it's efficient adventuring. She has tackled some of the world's toughest events, from hallucinating in the Alps to questioning the necessity of toenails in the American desert. She thrives on big, ridiculous races with breathtaking scenery, enough to make you forget that you're signed up for voluntary suffering. She has a wealth of experience and is here to help you survive 5 peaks and maybe just enjoy a little bit. So thank you, Beck, for joining us.
You're welcome.
And then we have Lauren. She is also, she's a trail runner here in SA as well. She's previously done orienteering, including stints in Europe. She's a mum of a 2 and a 4-year-old, a physiotherapist for people with special needs, has been doing this for over a decade. Has represented Australia in both mountain and trail running championships. And I know that last weekend she recently placed first in the 72k at Buffalo Stampede. So well done there. It's great work. And she was 3rd in the Australian Mountain Championships. And she says her favourite event is Mount Misery, despite the name, and 5 Peaks, of course. And then we also have Gavin from Tailwind. I was just chatting to him at the start, and he said his favourite distance is the 100-miler. I believe that was correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm going to let Gavin from Tailwind just give us a little bit of background about Tailwind. They're one of our sponsors or supporters this year's 5 Peaks. So Gavin, if you're able to give us a little bit of a spiel on Tailwind, that'd be great.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Nikki, and thanks for having us on board. It just shows your investment in the entrants, helping them achieve their personal podiums. Before I get on to actually Tailwind, so there's 3 main aspects you need to focus on during endurance exercise. And remember, this is during the exercise. This is not everyday nutrition, which Ering, I'm sure, is going to mention, because the body does react slightly different during the exercise than it does in everyday life. So the main 3 focuses are hydration, because we're perspiring more than we normally do. We're operating at a higher level, so we're pushing that liquid out of our body. Now, many people misunderstand about hydration. They go, we need to just throw loads and loads of liquid down. We encourage everyone to go and do a drink to thirst test. And that's basically on their next run, do a 10-minute warm up, go for an hour run with 2 soft flasks of water or Tailwind in it, take the headphones out, don't run with anyone else, and you're going to be focusing on your drink to thirst signals. There's 2 aspects to that. There's the physiological, which is every time, which most of us know, and that's, my mouth is dry, I feel thirsty. Then there's the neurological side, and this is the part a lot of us have switched off or forgotten to listen to. And that's any time you have a thought of moisture. So if you're running along and go, can't wait for my glass of wine at the end of this run, that's a moisture signal. You should have a sip. If you notice someone hosing their garden, you've noticed that liquid, you should have a sip. And it could be every 30 seconds, every 2 minutes. This is how you work out, you as an individual, how much you require when drinking to thirst. At the end of that hour, however much you've gone through, is how much you as an individual require under those general conditions when drinking to thirst. On average, most people, that's 500 millilitres. That's why at Tailwind, we recommend everyone start off at 500. But you could be 750, you could be 400. The average is 500. So I encourage you to find out what your drink to thirst quantity is. Now, let's say you're running and it's going to be, you're training in 20 degrees, but come the 13th of April and it's 35 degrees. You will require more liquid, but it won't be twice as much. It might be 100 to 200 mils extra an hour. And that you can simply pick up along the way at the aid stations, as long as you're getting your base amount for you in. The second aspect is electrolytes. Why do we take electrolytes? So in every normal day, going into the office, walking around, doing what we do perspire. But because we have enough liquid in our cup of tea, our coffee, our water, and we're eating a healthy, balanced diet, we're replenishing those electrolytes. So that's fine. However, during endurance exercise, we're perspiring at a far higher rate, so we're pushing those out. Now, if you picture inside our body is an electrolyte solution, it's the same as this glass of water. Now, if this glass water was salt water, which is our electrolyte solution, or part of it, and sodium is just as an example. And every day we'd take a sip, you'd pour some out, that's it leaving your body. And we can replenish that throughout the day, it's no issue. But now during an endurance exercise, we're pouring that out at a far higher rate. And if we only put plain water back in, eventually that salt water is not going to be salt water anymore. And we've then diluted our electrolyte solution in our body, and it cannot operate in its normal fashion. So that's why we need to take electrolytes on. Aside from that, they also assist in hydrating at a higher rate. So if you've got sodium, potassium present with glucose and your liquid, you're now operating those pumps in the lower intestine, so you're hydrating at a higher rate than just drinking plain water. An example is if you've been out for a run, it's pretty warm, and you get home and you're so thirsty and you scull a glass of water in the kitchen, and then you grab another glass and you scull another glass, but you're still so thirsty, but now your stomach's feeling really full. It's because it can only be absorbed at a certain rate. If, however, you had added a small amount of glucose with sodium, potassium into that liquid, you would hydrate up to 3 times faster than just that plain water. So you'd feel satiated at a higher rate. The third aspect is while we're exercising, we're burning energy. A lot of you will have a watch, a Garmin or Santo Kuros watch, and it'll tell you you're burning 700 to 1200 calories an hour. Now, the biggest mistake that most people make when it comes to fueling is they go, oh, I need to put that much back in. And we simply can't. So on any given day sitting sedentary here, we could probably digest about 450 calories an hour. So after your Christmas lunch, you go to sleep because your body reduces your heart rate, trying to help the blood down there digest. But during endurance exercise, the blood's diverted away from our digestive system, so we cannot digest as much as normal. So we recommend 2 to a maximum 300 calories. And I put a caveat on the maximum because you can train your gut more, but most mere mortals, 300 calories. That's about 75 grams of carbs. Okay, there are specifics to training your gut for higher, etc. So what we're talking about when we're fueling is we're burning primarily our fat stores. Okay, and all of us have about 10 days worth of fat stores, irrespective of our height, size, shape, etc. We've got about 10 days, so theoretically unlimited. But in order to burn that fat, our body uses a spark to ignite it, if you want. So if you compare the fat of a campfire, the analogy is that the fat was the big logs that you put on. They're slow burning, they keep going all night. Our glycogen stores are the kindling that ignites that little flames in the fires. And that's burnt very quickly. It's a very easily burnt fuel. So if I'm sprinting, I'm not burning my fat stores anymore. I'm now burning glycogen. But now during endurance exercise, we're burning primarily fat stores and using glycogen as that ignition source. The problem is we only have an hour and a half of glycogen stored in our system. So that's what we're doing by fueling during endurance exercise, is purely and utterly supplementing our glycogen stores. So that's the 3 aspects of fueling: is hydration, electrolytes, and carbohydrates, or supplementing your glycogen stores. And the easiest way we as human beings know is through simple carbohydrates. The body does not have to break them down any further, can absorb them very readily without making it work extra hard. So Tailwind, we have those three aspects taken care of in the one drink format. Okay, so we recommend every scoop is 100 calories or 24 grams of carbs. So we recommend everyone start off at 2 scoops or 50 grams of carbs mixed into 500 mils as a starting point. And through that, you can work out what your tolerances are through your drink to thirst test and your hunger. So if you go out for a training run and you go for 2 or 3 hours, and after 2 or 3 hours, you actually feel a bit hungry, all that is your stomach saying, oi, I can physically digest more than what you're getting. The next long run, you'd go 2.5 scoops or 250 calories. Eventually, you reach that point where you feel oversatiated. And that could be like having the thought, oh God, I just can't face putting anything in more into my mouth. I can't face taking anything more on. All that is your stomach saying, hey, I've got enough going on down here. Slow down with what you're trying to do, please. So then you would reduce that. For me personally, I'm 230 calories an hour. And that's from hour 1 to hour 60. It doesn't change as long as I'm doing that, because all I'm doing is supplementing my glycogen stores. So Tailwind is a very easy source to use because it has the electrolytes combined with that. So we do take advantage of the sodium potassium pumps in the lower intestines. We also use 2 sources of glucose. So we're utilizing the channels that the body has to offer. A lot of people, we get asked by a lot of people, should I use protein during endurance exercise? Our viewpoint is no. Because during endurance exercise, your body knows that what it needs is to supplement glycogen stores, because your brain only operates on glucose. That's it. And if it feels like you're burning your glycogen stores at a higher rate than what you're able to supplement, it'll actually slow you down or pull the reins on you. If you take protein during endurance exercise, the brain knows that it needs glycogen replenishment. So it actually takes that protein and converts it into a glycogen replenishment resource. And it's very inefficient at doing that. 70% gets burnt to make a 30% usable fuel source. So we say, why would you make your body work so hard for something that's so inefficient? But afterwards, protein, absolutely. And that's why in Tailwind's recovery mix, we've got the carbohydrates to replenish the glycogen stores afterwards, the electrolytes to replenish what you've perspired out, and the protein mixed in. Because then the brain goes, right, carbohydrates, supplement glycogen stores, protein, go and repair those muscles. And there is a difference in proteins too. Tailwind's protein is 74% complete. Most whey protein products are about 21% complete. Chocolate milk's 24%. The body needs a complete protein to rebuild those muscles. So the higher percentage complete it is, the easier it is for the system to work. So we only need 10 grams of protein to do the same effect as 35 to 45 grams of most protein powders. So one thing I encourage you to do, please, whatever you're taking, go to those ingredients, Google them, search what the benefits are for endurance athletes, search the products. In Tailwind's endurance field, there's nothing that's not already found in your body, apart from the natural flavoring, sorry. Everything else is already found in your body. That's why it's so easy for the system to digest and use it. And it's a very easy fuel source that way, because all you've got to do is just keep drinking, which is natural.
Yeah.
I better stop there, otherwise I'll keep going for hours.
No, thank you. Yes, I have done one of those, I guess, a sweat rate before, and I know that I was losing about 1 litre an hour, so I know that I need to take in a lot of water myself, or hydration
so
as well.
With the
so
sweat,
it's very important.
With the sweat rates, they say it's about half of what your sweat rate is that you should take in. So there's your 500 milliliters.
So, yeah. Right, thank you for that. I was going to jump over and get some questions going for everyone. I was going to ask Lauren, how did you find fueling your run over the weekend? How did you go with that? Like, what's your approach? That would be, it's only a little bit longer than 5 peaks and the distance wise, so it would be great to share that information as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I guess my approach
it's you know, I'm not a dietitian or anything like that, so it's not as scientific.
What's for you?
What's worked for me over many years has probably been focusing on. It's really important to focus on what you're having in the race, but also the days prior. So for me, like looking at, I often do some low fiber options, and you know, I do cut out a few sort of irritants in my gut the days before. For me, that's a bit like a FODMAP. It's a kind of a fancy word for some, you know, fruits and lactose and things that just sort of irritate my gut. But I used to think, oh, I need a big pasta party and like have so much the night before, and then wake up the next morning thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so bloated, and I feel, you know, and now just learning to sip on things, you know, to eat fairly simply and things like rasp bubbles and, you know, all these sorts of things, but then to sip on an electrolyte or an energy kind of drink like Tailwind, or, you know, throughout the day as well, in the day prior, and making sure that I've practiced it in my training runs to do that too. That's the really key thing. I also would really recommend having on my day, I generally go by sort of the equivalent of 2 gels or 1, you know, bottle of the Tailwind or mix per hour. The biggest thing I've learned is at the start of the race, you feel great, and you sort of in that early stage you think, oh, half an hour is gone. I really should have taken that gel, but I'm feeling pretty good. And it's quite easy to go, I'll just push it out a little bit. Or, you know, so I think having that, I set a timer on my watch, just because I'm actually better at, having gels at the start, and then I go to more liquid later on, and that's just my preference. But I have a timer on my watch that goes off every half hour just to check in to go, have I had that amount? And also having a few plan Bs. I always have, I call it my like little medi kit for nutrition. I have my ginger bears in case I feel a bit ill. You know, I have like some mint, you know, just to, I guess, refresh my mouth. I have a couple of different flavors of drink, and just those things that you can have a wonderful plan to, again, making sure you've done that in your training runs, but to make sure that you don't get super excited by whatever is offered on the aid station table if you haven't tried that before, as good as it looks, or even if that person on Instagram in the last race ate it and they, you know, found it really great, just to make sure that it actually works for you. And the other thing too would be to look at trying to find a similar event or a similar training race that you've done in conditions that are the same. You can, you know, go into an event with a plan around your hydration and things that, and this worked really well in my long run, and then forget that today is like it was last weekend, like 90%, 95% humidity. And while it's not temperature wise, it's really like humid. And I guess, you know, having a plan, but also the what ifs and as I say, the little like medi packs or the plan A, B, C, D, you know, to be aware that, and if you are feeling, you know, a bit low in energy or a bit, you know, whatever you're feeling, nauseous, things like that, to be aware if it is one of your first events, that is quite normal. It does take a lot of time to get right, and to kind of ride through those feelings, you know, and do the best you can, but not to sort of give up when you're feeling like that, I think is my day's over, you know. So that's probably from a very non-scientific background, just from lots of years of trial and error, that's what I've found to be quite helpful.
So you use a mixture of basically gels and hydration.
And a little bit of peanut butter. So I probably do a bit of fats. And I'm still breastfeeding, so I have a bit more fluid intake than I would have otherwise. But mainly very simple things. I'm not a big food intake person, apart from the some more sports nutrition types. But some people can handle that, especially if you're going to take a bit longer or different paces.
I was going to ask Erin, do you use any food in your longer distances?
So look, personally, yes, I still use food.
everyone's really individual.
Yes.
To it. So, you know, with my athletes sort of work through the different options, and we work through what are going to be the better options for each person, depending on their sort of likes, dislikes, what's been working for them in the past, what sort of fits in line with the recommendations that they require. But yes, personally, I do use some foods. I've used stuff like fruit, lollies. What else have I liked? Cornflake cookies I had at one point that I was enjoying. Like muesli bars and Cliff Blocks and all those sorts of things.
Different things,
Yeah.
Very different approaches, yes. Thank you, yes. Okay, I'm going to dive into another area here. I guess we've got like a week and a half coming up to 5 Peaks. Might try over to Beck if she's around. What would you suggest in the next like a week into doing preparation with training runs, reducing training runs? Any advice in that area?
A week out,
yes,
you are either probably feeling your training's amazing, or maybe for a majority of people going, I probably should have trained a little bit more. Which is where a lot of us are. A week out, I know there's a lot of tapering and things like that, but I would suggest, and carrying on from the conversations we're having now, maybe write down on a piece of paper what you think would be a really great idea for getting fuel into yourself, like just to get sort of mapping out something of what you're going to have every hour or every 45 minutes or sipping or whatever you're going to do. Just write that out and have a look at it and look over it from time to time, so that when you're starting, you haven't forgotten it, that you can start fueling really early on. Like Ering and Lauren have spoken on that, just start, and Lauren said just keep sipping. So if you can start writing that down and remembering that, and maybe even keeping that piece of paper with you, so you've got that and you know whether you're not having enough or not. And get your gear out and be ready. Get that. I'm really bad at not preparing very well for races, but that's a whole different thing about resilience and strategies of having to deal with things on the go. So I can talk a lot about that. But getting your gear out and getting ready, and also nobody's going to care about where you came in this. No one cares where you came, where you come in a race. So don't worry about what anyone else thinks. It's so not important. So this is for you. So maybe in this last week, have a chat to yourself and think about how you're going to look at 5 Peaks as something that is for you, not for anybody else. And I think that's get your mindset ready for that start line.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to ask everyone, have they got a favourite event they've done? Maybe why that's a favourite event? What went well, what didn't go well, maybe? Do you want to go? Who would like to go first? Gavin, maybe?
Sure. I think my event that went really well was, I think it was 2013. It was a Stephen Bradbury moment in the G&W 100 miler. We started off, it was 24 degrees when we started, and it went up to 40 degrees in the space of an hour. And 71% of the field couldn't continue. They collapsed out. And the few of us managed to finish it, and I got the top spot. So that was probably my Stephen Bradbury moment was probably my favorite. It is, to me, they don't run it, unfortunately, anymore. It's a point-to-point single trail race, and it's self-navigated. It is really just a huge challenge, and I think that's what I loved so much about it. It was the first year that we had tailwind, and it was the first 100 mile I ran just drinking tailwind, and I think that's what saved me. Is everyone else could not take their fueling. They just couldn't eat. They couldn't take what they had on board, and they lost out for it. I just want to raise one thing. When people are talking of gels, just remember please take 280 to 330 milliliters of liquid per gel. Okay, even the gel company is now writing on it, on their websites and on the packets, that the best way to consume it is put it in your drink bottle, shake it and drink it. Because if you don't take that moisture, the gel sits in your stomach waiting for moisture. If you don't give it moisture, it takes moisture from your bloodstream. That leads to further issues. So please, with solids, etc., make sure you are taking enough liquids. So sorry that I've diverted.
Thank you. Erin, do you have a favourite event? And
So no, there's a lot. But yeah, I actually got asked this question at the end of a podcast a little while ago. And my response is the same. So I'm not biased because the podcast was a New Zealand one. So Tarawera was my favourite. I did that quite a few years ago now, and I think the reason
was that the 100K or the miler there?
Yeah, 100K, yeah.
100K, yes, yep.
Yeah, I think the reason I loved it was it was a new place for me. I really love the races, just making it a new experience and an adventure, and being really able to immerse myself in it and not having the stress of work and all the other things that happen when you do local events sometimes. And just it was just the day itself. The weather was pretty rotten in the lead up with lots of rain, and the course was really muddy, and it threw everybody off. We were kind of, had these plans. I'm going to be able to run certain things at a certain pace or whatever. And it was just fun. It was just muddy, and it was a real adventure. I remember, jumping around and just splashing in the mud, and some people were getting frustrated about it. I was like, no, this is great. I'm here. It is what it is. I'm in another place. I'm on holidays. This is great. So that was a really fun day out. I think still is my favourite. Yeah.
Favourite, yeah. Lauren, do you have a favourite event?
Yeah, look, I have different ones for different reasons, but it's very stereotypical. But we did the OCC, so the 50K last year, as part of UTMB, and while it is one of the biggest trail races in the world, and it that could make it a great event. Actually, I just loved it because you're surrounded, amazing mountains. I didn't have any expectations at all. There was no placings. It was really just about going out there, enjoying it. I had my 2 and my 4-year-old, 1 and 3-year-old at the time, sitting at the top of little cafes and places and, yelling out, and we were all talking to each other in different languages. And it just really brought together what is so special about trail running. And I remember going up one of the really big hills, and we'd been so sick the weeks beforehand through travel, as you do often with kids. And I remember just getting to the start line and thinking, oh no, what is going to happen? And going up one of these really big hills, and it's called Colebatch. It keeps going. And suddenly my phone had reception and was connected to my watch. And I coach runners as well, as part of Runners One. And we had this group chat going on, and I could see all these messages on, people tracking, come on, keep going, you're doing well. And it was the only place I had reception the whole way. And it was just this realization that it's such a team sport, really. And you're all out there against the same mountains, and whether you're in going up Black Hill or going up something in Chamonix, it's just to be really proud of what you're doing and the why, and the whole experience around it was something that I will absolutely never forget. I will forget Kieran finishing at 1 a.m. with 2 children in the 100K and walking around crippled the day after trying to support crew him. But the bit I won't forget is the 50, and that was something was really special.
For sure. Beck, do you have a favourite event?
I don't have a favourite because I've run some really special races, so I don't have a favourite, but I look back on my first trail race and my first ultra, and that was the Marathon des Sables. That was my first time I ever ran on, obviously been on trail a lot, but the first time I did a race. And what I loved about it was being so new to that event and being so scared that I can't get that back again. Like every other race, you can be scared about the distance or what you have to do or the size of the mountains, but you kind of got some concept of what it's going to entail. But the Marathon des Sables is my first, and it was a multi-stage. So I had no idea what my capabilities were or were not. I didn't know if I was going to get out there and hate it and I couldn't get out. I didn't know if I was going to get out there and miss my children terribly and not be able to get out and see them. So it was all of those things about being such a newbie at it. And I guess the other thing as well is that because it's the multi-stage, and especially with the Marathon des Sables, nobody's allowed out in that desert. Like media crew aren't allowed out, except for the MDS media crew. So at the end of the day, there might be some medics and people around, but the only people you're surrounded by are other runners. So you can't complain about anything. You can't complain about sore feet. You can't complain about your shoulders. You can't complain about anything because every person that you can complain about is going through it as well. There's no one there to cheer you on. There's no one to tell you you're amazing. There's none of that. You've just got to come in humbly and say to yourself, man, I just did another day like that. And that was a really brilliant way to start. This running journey was humbly not look for accolades, and knowing that being a newbie and being scared, and I don't know how many people on this forum that you're scared or you're a newbie, that's a really cool place to be because you won't be that again. After this race, you will start to have an understanding of what you're doing. So really embrace that of being scared because you'll come out of it completely different, and that's a really nice space to be in.
So kind of circling around there, what's like how do you push through those low points in a race, because you can be out there all day? How do you move forward through that tough place that you get in a low point in the race and you just feel like pulling the pin? Do you have any strategies to work through those kind of moments?
For me, if I was in an overseas race, I would be, and I'd know that I'd taken money away from the family network to get into this race and go, that I was no way I was coming back to my kids and say, it was a little bit tough, I pulled out, and I took a whole bunch of money with me. So sorry about that. So that kind of get me on. Or when I'd be skint with lots of these races as well, but I would, at the beginning of the race, I would buy some merchandise. So with UTMB, I bought a jacket that was pretty expensive for me at the time. And I don't wear race gear until I finish. So sometimes out there, I knew that I wouldn't be able to wear it unless I finished. So that would keep me going.
Bit of motivation.
And also another one I do is that and this came from experience though, is that I knew that no matter how hard it got or what pain cave I was in, I would visualize myself running through the finish line because it happens. You end up at the finish line. You know, at some point you will end up at the finish line. So visualizing that kind of gets through. And a lot of that kind of, really comes down to maybe also when I've been a sweeper, that's been a really cool place to observe what I can see people going through at the end. And what I've noticed is that people that are at the back but they want to finish have got a certain kind of momentum happening. They're definitely going to go. They're probably talking positively themselves. They're not at all bothered at all about coming last. They just want to finish. The people that pull out you can see the inner dialogue happening. They're convincing themselves. They're telling themselves, I'm going to pull out. So it's 100% what happens up here. So you just decide on what you're going to listen to or not. I was speaking to some people last night about in Bigfoot in America, we came to the after party and people were still out on course. So they're probably out on course for 5 or 6 days maybe. And they have to run around the school loop. And when they came around the end, this was the very last person. We all lined up on either side of the track and we put our hands up to make a tunnel. And the very last person runs through and gets a really cool trophy, DFL, dead fucking last. So having things like that, it was kind of like, man, you've been out there and sucked it up more than all of us.
The longest amount.
Yeah, dead fucking last. It's great. I was going, that was that
Oh,
camaraderie and the races that are so special are those races that everyone's coming out and supporting those people at the back, because they've got a whole different level of grit getting through. Everyone does, obviously, in those races, but be proud. When you hurt and you continue to go, be proud. You're creating grit. That's awesome, and great neuro pathways. So it's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a sometimes in those moments, my glucose levels, like everything is just, I can't think. So I used to get to those moments in the race, and there were probably, I think, 2 races. I probably DNF'd 4 times in my life. I did 2 in a row, and I was like, what is going on here? And I worked out it's because when I was in those really like tough places, I couldn't think because I was just hurting everywhere. So I started having, like, I've got 5 fingers, and I just draw before I race. I draw 5 things on my hand, and it's like my hard times toolkit. So I have one thing where I have one flavor of like a little bar that I really love. That's like my emergency, I need to pick me up something. So it's like a really nice chocolate, peanut butter thing. So that's like one thing. My other one is I do sometimes phone a friend. So sometimes I'll phone Kieran while I'm running with my headphones and talk to my kids. I always have something planned afterwards, and I'll just write whatever that is. So in Bright, it was this burger place we wanted to go to, and we were going to go there as a group. So I just drew a little burger on my finger, my third, and then I have something that's important to me. So for me, it's like a Bible verse, but other people, whatever it is that's like a line that like you can repeat in your head, that's something that's important. And then the last thing is like a picture of 2 people, and it's just to make a comment to someone else, like get out of your own headspace and just, oh, well done, or look around you, because what you soon realize is everyone else is in your same position, and in a moment you'll be able to help each other along. And I think when you get out of that, suddenly you feel a lot better. So they were kind of helpful. And the only other one sometimes I used to put on my fingers was a cloud to remember that it will pass. Because at the time it just feels like, oh, I've still got to get up that hill. I've got 33 kilometers and I'm this and I'm that. But if you but if you think about it and you think back to other experiences, it actually does pass. And when you get to the end, you're like, oh, that was so much fun. But you've forgotten about the middle part.
That's good tips.
But it's just having something in advance. For me, some people may be better at thinking when they're out on course and mental toughness, but I was just a bit much.
Erin, do you have anything that get you through?
It's definitely been planned, and across all fronts. So, knowing the course, knowing the pacing that I would hopefully be able to sustain across the different parts of the course. Obviously knowing my nutrition. I would generally be planning that weeks out from the race, and practicing it from at least probably 12, maybe 16, even longer before the race, to really get a good feel for things. And particularly if I was going to be doing any gut training, I'd be spending a lot of time on that. In terms of like how that would sort of look, I have it all written down, leg to leg. What am I going to be having at each leg? Understanding my carb requirements for each of those legs, my fluid requirements for each leg, and then planning the nutrition that's going to be able to support that. The other thing I guess is just my own personal mindset strategies. So for me, I'm big on mantras. I've got a few that I've used that I remind myself of during tricky times of the race. One of them was be one with the trails, which I picked up from an elite athlete I heard talking at one of the pre-event warm-ups, which I just thought was really nice, where sometimes there's a tricky bit of trail or it's a big hill or whatever, and we kind of just have this tendency to fight against it, and it only makes it worse. And so it's about accepting this is what the trail is, just be one with it and go with it. So that was one that really worked well for me. But everyone needs to come up with their own things, I think. I stole that from someone and it worked well for me, but there's lots of different ones. So very similar things to Lauren and Beck as well, around just looking forward to what's coming at the end, running into your friends and you know, the events that you've got around it. Plan to have some moment to celebrate. You know, don't go and just go back to work the next day after a massive achievement. Like, great, soak it up.
Enjoy it, yes.
And not can verify that. We drove straight from Buffalo home into work, and
Wow.
really good idea.
Straight in the car after that. Yeah, that we had heard.
Terrible idea.
Yeah, I know in some of my runs, when I'm struggling, I just count to 10. I just keep counting to 10 over and over my head, and it just focuses me on something else. And that's, I don't know, it's just, I don't know how many times I count to 10, but if I'm struggling in a little section, I just count to 10, and it just gets me through that next 15 minutes, whatever I need to pass. Yeah, it's one of my little strategies I use as well. I want to ask you guys, what's one piece of gear that you would not race without or not run without, like your little, like maybe comfort or go-to piece of gear? Gavin, do you have any gear?
I don't. No, I don't have any particular piece of gear that is the lucky charm.
Yeah.
But other than the nutrition, of course.
Yes.
Tailwind. No, there's not one particular bit of gear. I think going on the last point, you know, on the rest days, I use those days and the long days for visualization of the race. What's it going to be like if it's pouring with rain? What's it going to be like if it's 30? So that way, when it happens, the mind's already seen it and doesn't throw its toys out the cot. So I use that. But no, there's not one particular lucky charm, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, other than my wife as support crew.
Lovely, nice. There's a question that's popped up about cramping.
Yeah.
Can we give any advice on? I just open it again. Sorry. Cramping on course.
Absolutely.
And any recovery tricks?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we don't really know what causes exercise-induced cramping, but we do know it's a domino effect. And it's usually brought on by muscle fatigue of that particular muscle or muscle group being overworked. So, for example, if you train on flat tarred roads and then you go and run a UTA with a billion stairs in it, your calves are going to cramp because you haven't trained them for what you're trying to put them through. You haven't trained the muscles at the intensity that you're going to put them through, you will cramp. Now, what brings on muscle fatigue faster is lack of hydration or dehydration, lack of electrolytes and lack of fueling. So if you stay on top of those and you stay within the intensity that you've trained with, you shouldn't cramp. There is about 5% of the population that will cramp regardless. Sorry, guys, there's nothing we can do about that. But it's one of the biggest misconceptions is that salt prevents cramping. So you'll see a lot of people put salt and sprays in their tongue, etc. All that does is it breaks the neurological message between the brain and that muscle. It does not stop the cramping. So your brain just can't feel that pain sensation. And, you know, if you're running a 56K race and that happens at 20 Ks, it's not advisable to mask that pain because you probably tear that muscle. If it's the last 2 or 3 Ks, sure, mask it to get home. But if you do suffer from cramp, back off the intensity, stretch out that muscle, take on your hydration, electrolytes, and your fueling, and then start off at a lower intensity again. That's how you will deal with the cramps.
Thank you.
Happy to add a bit there.
Yeah, sure.
If you like. So, yeah, Gavin is correct. We really don't have any good evidence-based guidelines at this stage around the best practice for managing cramps or reducing risk of cramps. There was a really great paper that was published, it's probably a couple of years old now, by a researcher who very much, his bulk of his research is on exercise-associated muscle cramps. And he's come up with this sort of threshold hypothesis where every individual person has their own unique threshold at which they will cramp, and they've got their own unique factors that will contribute to creeping up closer and closer towards that threshold and then finally having a cramp. Some of those factors, certainly might include fatigue, which can happen for a range of reasons. So, you know, it may be that you haven't trained enough at the right intensity. It may be that you haven't fueled or hydrated correctly. Possibly it could be that, you know, you may have had a bad night's sleep. There's also theories around the central nervous system and just overexcitation. So it might be that you've dumped in a whole lot of caffeine or other stimulant type supplements, which I have been guilty of in a race and suffered very badly from with cramps one day. or that you're just stressed out and anxious at the start of the event. There's, potentially medications might contribute to having a cramp that, might put you at risk of that as well. There's things that we can do, I guess, as sports dietitians to try and evaluate what might be your risk factors and then how could we kind of try and address it. But I think it's really important for everyone to understand that there is no magic cure, as much as we would wish there was. People will say salt's your cure, or have your, pickle juice, that's going to fix it. Pickle juice can sometimes help reduce the duration of the cramp, not by that much, but a lot of people do, find it a little bit helpful. There's no magic bullet, and I would love to be able to give you a bit more information about that with some more research down the track.
No, thank you. I've just had another question come through as well. Any recommendations on dynamic or static stretches pre and post race? You guys have a little warm up you go through, or anything you do at the end of the race run? Yeah,
I would probably kind of touching on all those questions a little bit, but
sure.
In terms of having my pack, so in the we go out in the race, we have a pack, we have a management gear, all those sorts of things. I used to get these awful stomach cramps in races, and kind of like a stitch cramp, and couldn't work out what it was, and I worked out it was because I was never practicing wearing all my gear that I was going to run my race in with my pack. My pack was actually too big. And then I worked out if I put my phone at the back down the bottom, and I put other things. Anyway, I've eventually stopped that. And I was thinking, it was just a whole kind of saga that just kept happening. And the same thing kind of then with static dynamic stretches, etc. I remember again, we can get influenced by different things we see and going, when it's taper time, I should start stretching. Or maybe because I'm not running that day, I'll go with my friend to that yoga class because I've got the time and I'm not going to be running as much. And the reality is, again, you don't want to start anything new, and doing too much, stretching and different things that you're not used to, can make you really sore. You can overstretch your hamstrings, end up with tendonitis, and as a physio, there's lots of different things. But certainly some glute activations, some crab walks with the band, things that you want to do to act, mainly, especially women, activating your glutes or even your core, warming up your muscles. But the key thing there is you don't just want to do it before your race or after your race, but you want to have practiced it in your hard training session or in that hard race simulation long run. Because we suddenly have this idea that, for my race, maybe I'll just try this thing because it's special and it's race time. And so often I see, even as a physio, that that's when people run into injuries or things like that. The only thing I would say post-race, definitely getting in, Ering and Gavin would be much more, getting in your nutrition and things, rather than just that, celebrating and keeping warm too, keeping your muscles warm, having some trackies or an old jumper that someone's bringing you down. Those sorts of things. They don't sound very scientific. They don't sound very fancy. They're not, a cherry, sour cherry cream or anything like that, but they are quite effective. And with pickle juice, I've never used it, but the thought of having to take pickle juice has stopped me cramping. So I think it's great.
And do you think that after you finish racing, that maybe just walking around or just being just moving is probably better than massages or stretching or anything like that? Probably not stretching too much, but just moving. Yeah,
absolutely. I found since having kids, because I'm running around after them after races, that I pull up so much better. Yeah. Whereas before you would just sit or do some kind of stretching. Whereas it's
active
just
recovery.
Natural things. Yeah. Yep.
Definitely. And I find that what I won't race without, I always have a little kit. One of it is whatever you might want to use for lube, but baby bum cream is probably one of the best I would find. I always have a little bit of baby bum cream with me. I put it at the beginning of a race in my bits. I've had so many races where friends have rung me up and said that race was awesome, but oh my God, it hurts so bad to pee now after a race. Baby bum cream before a race is great, but I always take a bit with me, and I would always take a little kit. I get toe blisters. So now, as soon as I feel like I've got a toe blister, I stop straight away, and I always have a little needle with me. And I pop that straight away. That's just for toe blisters. And I'll have, just Band-Aids and hiker's wool or something. Just wherever you've got a hot spot in your foot, I just get that hiker's wool and I just shove it in against, my skin. So that's what I would never race without, is the baby bum cream, a needle. Most people won't need a needle. Hiker's wool. And some Band-Aids.
Yeah, and I would always, if it's hot and if you're doing a longer race, have shoes that are half a size bigger.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that shouldn't make too much of a difference, but shouldn't make too much of a difference in being bigger, but should help out a lot. When you're out there. Yeah, I agree.
I think that's an important part too. It's not just about the run that you're doing, it's race management, which is pre and post. So I remember one of the it used to be the North Face in the Blue Mountains, and I completely did not think about what happens when I finish. And it was freezing. It was like 2 degrees. And I hadn't thought of, hang on, I need to take Ugg boots, a beanie, warm clothes, all that stuff. So, for 2 hours, you're just shivering, and it's a terrible way to try and recover. So think of the whole weekend as, right, what can I do for myself to make sure that it's going to be most comfortable the whole weekend? And that includes afterwards, soft shoes to walk around. Everybody laughs at Crocs, but they're very comfortable afterwards.
Your feet are going to be sore. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So,
and can I jump in and ask everyone as well, if that's okay? We all we've heard a lot about good nutrition and what's really good to take out there, but what does everyone do when everything's gone to shit and you've got nausea and you feel awful and you can't get anything in? What have you done to get through that when it's gone badly? You're in it.
I think I'll start off with, I know what got you to that point.
Yeah, but what do you? I know, but what?
So the reason. No, I understand that.
What do you do next?
What gets people to that point is they've had too much. And their stomach, it's like if you picture a funnel and you've got this little spout down the bottom, only so much can go out the spout at a certain rate. And if you keep pouring stuff in the top, eventually it's going to start to flow. That creates the issues. So the only way to reset that is empty what's in that top part of the funnel, and that is throw up. So reset your stomach. That's the only way to do it. But then it takes a good hour to 2 hours after you've done that for things to start to settle down again. So
there's often a lot of people I know that have said to me, it's not that they've put too much in, they haven't put enough in. And they can't get anything in. They physically can't get anything in their mouth. It makes them feel sick. But just wondering what people do when they're out there with nausea.
So normally if they can't have anything, if they're looking at taking a solid, and this is why I say, a gel, as far as the stomach is concerned, is a solid. 280 to 330 milliliters of liquid requires with that. So if you've been taking on solids, but you haven't taken any liquids, your stomach will get to that point of, hang on, there's bucket loads in here that I can't physically digest any further, and create that issue. So it's not because you've had too much, is you haven't had enough liquid with that to be able to physically digest it.
I would say too, my biggest dangers are when you go to an aid station, they're filling up bottles with, say, Tailwind or anything, and they're totally different dilutions to what you think they are. When things go bad, sometimes they just go bad, and you have to slow down your pace. If I've got poles with me, I'll just whack them out, and I'll just but ginger I do find helpful. Peppermint, sometimes flat ginger ale, I hate it at any other time in my life. I cannot stand it, but when I'm feeling really sick, it makes me feel a lot better. Also, there's something even just trying to get a bit of Vegemite, or just something strong to get whatever other taste there is in my mouth. One race I brushed my teeth
Yep.
Brushing teeth's a great one.
Yeah, because
good, yeah.
it's just, or even the old Listerine patches.
Yeah.
Because I got so over the sweet feeling and I felt like I was going to vomit. I didn't know what to do. And I have had actually probably more under, like, being not taken it enough, and I feel a bit woozy because I'm, again, it's like you've thought you've taken a whole bottle of whatever, but it's been really under diluted. And I'll tell the difference by I'll feel a bit woozy if I've not had enough carbs, or I'll feel like sick if it's like just sick if it's too much. But yeah, any strategies that you can do just to start again, kind of.
Mineral water is a good one too. A lot of people have mineral water, and they, the effervescence. Brush your teeth, have some mineral water, clears that system out.
And the only thing I'd say is I just would avoid caffeine if I'm feeling sick.
They're super complex.
The
cramping issue, there's again a bit of a threshold hypothesis where, we've all got our own individual risk factors, and it could be under or over fueling, it could be a hydration problem, it could be that you have got too stressed from going too hard, and you're not used to that. It could be, again, medication related. It could be a sodium concern potentially. There's so many different reasons it can happen, and management can have a lot of different strategies as well. There's a podcast I did a little while back actually on this topic, so if anyone wants to have a really good listen, I did a podcast on fueling endurance early last year on what do you do when your race plan falls apart. And we do talk about nausea as one of those examples. Advice I give to my clients when we talk about some of these things, definitely I would consider backing off the fueling for a little bit if someone is starting to feel unwell. I do encourage them to try and at least keep some base level coming in, however, and even if it's, even if it comes down to just holding a chew in the side of your mouth or swishing a bit of sports drink around your mouth just to activate carbohydrate receptors in your mouth, which can help you at least feel like there's something coming in, which can kind of do a bit of a brain trick and help you perform for a little while. It won't last for very long. You will need to start fueling at some point. Also, just checking and correcting hydration. It is really important for people to understand what their hydration needs are. Drink to thirst often is a good strategy, but it's not always the best. Some people can't really navigate that thirst very well. Sometimes people, they've just got a bottle that's hard to access, or they're very focused on just, I need to finish this particular volume every hour, and that's just what I always do every race. And it's important to have a good understanding, I guess, of what your hydration needs are, and your sweat rate testing is a big part of doing that, and then looking at your different strategies that sort of drive you to drink. If you've got an idea of what your needs might be, and you just have a look in your back and like, oh my God, I've only drunk like half of what I should have, and now that I think about it, like I'm actually feeling a bit dizzy as well, and like I'm really thirsty. Yes, so actually a hydration problem. You need to fix that, and that's about then starting to take on some extra fluid, but doing it in a way that's not going to make it worse, where you're suddenly guzzling a whole bunch of fluid on dehydrated gut that's now no longer as good at absorbing the fluid, and it's just going to potentially sit there and just make you feel even worse than you did before. So I'd be just sipping little bits slowly. Ginger, anecdotally, a lot of people say it works. There aren't really any high quality studies that support that. But
I like the ginger too.
And what else people do?
Alison has said a cup of black tea. She has a cup of black tea.
Slow down. Definitely get those stress hormones down. Sometimes that can be what's contributing to nausea. You're hot as well. That's another one sometimes. Put some water on your head, or take off some layers, or get into the shade on the track as much as you can.
You can also, people forget that if they've got drop bags, they can freeze the bags or the bottle of tailwind that they're picking up. So by the time you get there, it's a slushy and keeps your core temperature down. On the hot conditions, it's easier to absorb. And the reverse, if it's going to be cold, why not drink it hot? That aspect. And Ering, you're dead right with that. A lot of people, when they have a bladder on their back, quite often they'll finish a run going, I've drunk so much, and they pull the bladder out and it's hardly been touched. So a strategy we encourage people to do is, if your drink to thirst rate is 500 mils or 600 mils an hour, put that much water in your bladder, take a sip and spit it out into the sink, and then work out how many sips it takes you to go through that. Now, for me, it's 12 in 500 mils. And as you know, I like to talk, so I make sure I count to at least 6. And then if I've lost count, I go from 6 to 12. So at each hour, I'm roughly getting that correct amount. You know, it'll be a rough idea if you're using the bladder, because it does trick people into thinking they've been drinking, but they haven't. So it's just something to be aware of.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to open up the field. Oh, there's any more questions? Okay. We've got a question about any advice on the course itself as to difficulty. We've only done some parts of it. So 5 peaks starting in Black Hill and finishing in Belair. No, the side of it is quite tough. There's a fair bit of elevation in that. Do you only have any tips on getting through that part of the course and making it through to the end of the course?
Yeah, I guess starting from the beginning, like understand how you want to feel towards the end. So maybe don't go out too fast if it's new and you haven't experienced a lot. Yeah, I guess it's what we all say. Power up those hills. But maybe not run if you don't have to, like fast pack it as much as you can, I guess. Yeah, if you're unfamiliar or if it's kind of new or the distance is new, use the race as an experiment. And don't go out too fast. But if you do, you'll just learn. It's okay.
Yes, it's okay.
We all got to do it. Some of us do it, more than once. So yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. Sorry, I think a strategy that I was taught was if you start and you're running at the pace that you wish you could finish at, well, you're running way too fast.
Yeah.
So slow down, because most people make the mistake of going too hard. There's some coaches that actually make their runners start at the back on purpose because it deflates their ego so that they don't go and push out as hard.
I would say there's 3 key points on the just like in terms of the actual trail in 5 peaks that are probably the hardest. In terms of, I mean, everyone thinks about the first hills. You look at the elevation profile and you're like, then it gets easier. I would say the hardest parts about 5 peaks versus Eurobilla, I've probably done between the two of them a dozen times, in the directions. And I find it hard, and then quite a lot of races even interstate, because they are not as steep, but they have key, different parts in them. So the downhill into Horsenells in 5 peaks, so it's really runnable. It's like this beautiful wide fire trail. And what happens is you've just done a lot of climbing and you're like, I could catch up some time here. And that is a really dangerous part. And often you just think about, where are the big hills? But for me, it's the downhills that I want to focus on. So not going too hard down Horsenell Gully.
Yep.
You've then got like the climb up Horsenell. Someone said about bringing poles. I mean, you could use them up Black Hill or up that little bit of Horsenells if it helps you. Only Horsenells is quite... Chapman's probably more so. Horsenells is very technical, so it'd be hard to work out where you probably find as much time putting your poles places as you would like using them. So that's the first one. The other one is Brown Hill, downhill. Yep. You're thinking, I've got not much more to keep going. It's only up that tiny little Brown Hill Creek, and then I'm into Belair. That downhill, you can absolutely smash your quads going down into Brown Hill Creek. And that road, that's Brown Hill Creek Road, looks like a tiny elevation profile, but it's the most deflating road in Adelaide, because you think you should be running it, and it's this annoying gradient that is hard to run, especially in terms of cramping if you just smash the downhill. So that's the second bit I would worry about. And then the last bit is the hill after Brown Hill, after Pony Ridge. You've got the switchbacks, and you've got the switchbacks, and then you go back down into Blair again, and there's one last hill. And the first time I ever did 5 peaks, it was the first year they ran it, and that last Blair hill was the only time I probably ever really badly cramped in the race, because I just got excited with the second to last downhill. So for me, it would be worry about the downhills and not doing them too fast, and the other bits will just happen. That's just my opinion.
On the course there, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that Morialta can be very hot.
Yes, Morialta can be quite hot coming around the front there. Generally coming around in the middle of the day where there could be a fair bit of heat as well. There was a question about poles. So yeah, we've talked about poles. You can use poles. Things like Chapman's Hill might be good for poles as well. Getting up that hill. I mean, but if you haven't trained with them, I would probably suggest maybe not using them. There's a bit of a technique to using those poles as well.
Nikki, sorry, just to interrupt.
Yeah, sure.
We were up running around there last night with the TRSA Tuesday around the weight area, and just letting everyone know the ground is really hard. So when Lauren's talking about, just being wary about not smashing your calves, we actually made the comment last night, gee, it's going to be hard on legs coming down here. So it is. Yeah.
Being very dry, hasn't it? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any more questions from the audience? Anyone, just feel free to type them in or your hand up. Otherwise,
So we hear about, say, Erin's top 3 nutrition tips.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. Top 3 nutrition tips. Okay, I've probably outlined them a little bit already, but first one is, know your fueling, practice. As I said, most of my clients I work with for months before their major races to get them really ready to perform as best as they can with the right fueling that they need. You don't need the same fueling for every race, and I think this is where people get stuck, where they think, I have 50 gram an hour of carb and that's just what I do for every race. The amount you're going to need is going to really depend on the intensity and duration of that effort and, what you've trained yourself to be able to tolerate as well. But ideally, you would get a bit of an idea of what the requirements would be for your race, months ahead of the race itself. And from there, you would start practicing, building your fueling up over a period of time. And that would depend, I guess, on the individual, how quickly you might do that and how the different strategies you might use for it. People that are having more concerns with gut issues, I would certainly have a longer build for that, whereas others you can often ramp things quite quickly. Your gut doesn't have to be a limiting factor if you train it. And this is a big thing I see with athletes that do struggle with gut issues, is they just have not done enough of that training. And as you progress, as you get closer, you're starting to build in your specific race fuels. So, if you've never tried tailwind, don't go and try it for the first time on race day. You need to practice with it beforehand so your body can adapt. There's evidence that the study, they looked at feeding people with fat versus carbohydrate, and they showed that those people adapted, their guts adapted better to the fuels that they putting in there. So it's a good message that you need to practice with your race fuels, and you need to do that from, I would say at least, minimum 4 weeks out from your race, and not just in your long runs. So consider doing it in, any run longer than an hour. You should be fueling anyway. But also, trying to build it into some of your higher intensity sessions where you've got a bit more stress, which is a bit harder for the gut to cope with. And you're then forcing it to have to take on that fuel. So yes, that fueling is a really big component. Most people I work with will typically be under fueling, but there is a tendency now for a lot of people in the more elite sports, or those that are perhaps at the higher end, that are really trying to push these very, very high levels of fueling, up to perhaps, I've heard reports of 140 gram an hour in a 100-mile race, for example, over in the US from a really recognised coach. We just don't have the evidence yet to say that that is necessary. So maybe that is something that's doable and possible and does help with performance, but we just don't have that research at this stage. So really, we top out about 90 gram an hour as where most people will, be able to gain really good performance if they actually train to tolerate that, if they can manage an intensity high enough for long enough. Probably not so appropriate for someone that's at the end of the pack. But yes, there is some evidence around athletes fueling up to around 120 gram an hour where we are seeing perhaps some benefits in terms of better recovery, less muscle damage. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. Next one, so your hydration, absolutely really important as well. So know your sweat rate. Go and do some sweat rate testing. Most people have never done it before. Some people have done it, but they've only done it once and assume they always lose the same amount of fluid every hour and they need to replace the same amount of fluid every hour. It always changes. And that's where part of that drink to thirst strategy comes from, is that your sweat rate is not going to be the same at the start versus in the middle of the day versus overnight. It's always changing. So you can't just say, I drink 500 ml an hour every hour and that's right for me. It might be right for some hours, but it could be completely off for others. So that's where that drink to thirst is kind of helpful for ultra endurance, because it helps you to respond, I guess, to what's happening in the environment and how that's impacting your sweat rate. Knowing your sweat rate is also really handy to plan your fluid on the legs of the race. So how much do I need to carry for each leg? So you're not running around with, 2 kilos extra on you in fluid, or you're not running out halfway through the leg. And it also helps in dictating your sodium requirements as well. Now, probably for 5 peaks, I mean, it depends how long you're out there, but, for people that are finishing it, between, 6 hours, maybe a little bit longer than that, you probably don't need to worry too much about your sodium levels. It's a bit complicated. I'm not going to go into too much details about the sodium story, but essentially, to really have a big deficit of, have to replace a large percentage of your fluid, you really need to be running for a very long time, or it needs to be very hot. So, 100K events or 100-mile events are situations where you might need to put back 80, 90% of the fluid that you lose. And that's the situation where there's that risk of you potentially getting it really wrong and having a lot of dilute fluid without enough sodium. And that's where sweat sodium assessment can potentially be helpful. It's something that definitely, is of growing interest, and I think we need more work around ideal methods. But at the moment, the best way we can do it is with a sweat patch when you run, to collect sodium and then analyse the sodium content of that. And from there, we can kind of plan a little bit around sodium replacement. But for 5 peaks, for most situations, I would expect us probably not necessarily to worry about it too much. Include some sodium if it makes your foods and drinks taste better and helps you eat them, consume them, that's great. But don't get too caught up in the detail. The last one, I guess, is just that plan. So as I mentioned before, you really want to be thinking about this now if you haven't already. Right, get yourself a spreadsheet, or make a table in a Word document, or you can use things like Ultra Pacer that can help you kind of work out like your leg times, and from there you can start figuring out, okay, well, I know what sort of levels of fueling and hydration I'm sort of targeting across the different stages of the race. Now I can look at those specific legs and start to think about what food and drinks am I going to have for each of those legs. What am I going to do at the aid station, so I'm not wasting time and stressing out, so I can just keep moving through. And part of that plan should also include your carbohydrate loading strategy, which again, this is stuff you guys should all have practiced by now at least once. And if you haven't done that, get onto it. So write your list of what you need. The amount of times I talk to people and they're like, I was meant to do carb loading, but I was at work and I forgot to take my food, and there was nothing in my bag, and so I missed out on 200 grams of carbs that I was supposed to have today. So being organised is really, really important. And it's not just the nutrition stuff. Do your mindset stuff in the last few weeks. Absolutely, think about your strategies. What are you going to do to get yourself out of a hole? What are you going to do if all those things that can go wrong. And yes, recovery too. Have something in your bag to get down straight away when you finish. Food is often a really great option. There's not too many times when you can't get food unless you're on a really perhaps isolated area. Absolutely, you can use things like the commercial recovery products and that sort of stuff if you like them. And perhaps, again, if you can't get real food, that's a good option. And also just think about, what else you're going to need in terms of warm clothes and, stuff that's going to make you feel good. Maybe, some wet wipes to, sweat off so you're not so uncomfortable when you're walking around afterwards. yeah, so that would be my top 3 things: fueling, hydration, have a plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I just had one question pop up about our markings on the course, and we have frequent marking on the course. We'll have crosses at paths where the trail goes off. You're not meant to go down those, so there'll be a cross. There is frequent course marking, so it shouldn't get lost anywhere on course. I hope that helps. I was going to finish off asking everyone their top tip for our runners for 5 Peaks. What's your top tip do you give to everyone for the run, lead up to the run, on the day? Just something they can, have in the back of their mind to keep on. You would like to, yes, go, Lauren.
Well, it sounds really simple and really, basic,
Yes.
but just like really enjoy it. Like, look forward to the run. Remember, you're paying to be there. Like, you've decided to go and do this race. You've got one thing to focus on. And just like celebrate. And I think if I look at all the runs I've done in my life and the ones that I've done the best in or whatever, it has been the ones where I've been the most relaxed, the most settled, and just going out there to really enjoy it. So while all of this stuff is really important, and having plans and nutrition and all of these things are super important, if it, don't get to the point where you're so over analyzing everything that you've forgotten the big picture about why you're actually there. That's probably my biggest tip.
Yep. Beck, do you have
mine would be beware the chair. When you get into an aid station, beware the chair. You don't need to be sitting on it. It's not like a gathering place. It's not a restaurant. Keep moving through. I reckon about 30 seconds to a minute, maybe for 56K. Sometimes it can feel nice if you're in a pain cave to sit down and chat to people and tell them your woes, but ultimately you've got to get up and keep going. So maybe aid stations, just move through them. Before you get into an aid station, work out what you need. How much hydration do you need? How much fuel do you need for the next one? So get that kind of mapped out of, okay, what's the distance between this aid station, that aid station? What do I need to have in my pack? Work that out before you get there. As you're moving through it, grab it. Smile at everyone. But then that might not be your jam, but it does make you feel good. But volunteers are amazing. But move through that aid station. You've got no idea how much time you'll make up by moving through. Socialize at the end or on course, unless you're going out there for a fun run and you're quite cool, like taking as much time as you want and then hang out at the aid station. But if you're going out there and want to finish that thing and you're a bit spooked, move through your aid station. That would be my advice.
Thank you. Gavin, do you have a top tip for our 5 Peak runners?
Yeah, I think the main thing is as Beck said, just have fun and keep smiling and have fun. Remember why you're there. There's lots of white noise that happens and lead up to it, and you go before the event, someone says, oh, you need to have this and you need to have that. Just have fun. Don't get caught up in those things. Smile. I don't know if you watched that Eliud Kipchoge sub 2 hour marathon in the last 5Ks. He actually had some of those paces that were there purely to say, smile. And because it forces the brain to think that what you're doing is 100% normal. So just keep doing that, because the brain controls the muscle.
Erin, do you have a top tip for our 5 Peak runners?
Yeah, I agree with all the others. Keep it fun.
Yes.
There is actually apparently some research that smiling does improve performance. So there you go. I've not read that study, but I've heard of it.
Yeah.
And I definitely think for me, when I've been just generally happier in a run, like it's helped talking to others. As Lauren said before, like sometimes it just breaks down stupid competitive things that you've made up in your head that actually don't matter. And it's just nice to, meet different people and have a chat about how things are going. And just, really just enjoy the community, look around you, look at the beautiful place you get to run, and the fact that you get to do it in the first place, like it's pretty special. There's not too many people in the world that can do this sort of stuff. And, we're pretty lucky. So, just enjoy it. Yeah.
Thank you. They're all good tips there. Definitely just enjoy the day and try and make the most of it. And you'll feel amazing at the end, hopefully. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to read the comments. But still watch
It's a good point.
Oh, yes. Someone has just written, have a chat, but still watch for trail marking. So make sure you can keep an eye on the course as well while you're having a chat. If there's any more questions from the audience, please let me know. And rocks, watch out for rocks. So yeah, we've got a week and a half until 5 peaks. So I hope everyone is ready and found some useful information from tonight. It was great to have all of you guys on board. No late entries, Alison has said. So please, if you haven't registered yet, please jump on and register. We have the ultra distance, but there are shorter distances as well. So you don't have to jump to that big distance. You can do a shorter distance and still have a great day out. So thank you very much to Lauren and Beck and Ering and Gavin. That was a really good session. And I look forward to seeing everyone out there. So thank you very much.
Have fun, everyone. Enjoy.
Yes.
Thanks.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right.
See ya.
Yeah.